double crochet. So the next stitch we're going to talk about is one taller than single crochet, which we did last week, and it's double crochet. It's probably the most commonly used stitch after single crochet. So let's go through a few of the variations. First of all, if it's double crochet, that means in US terms you start with 2 loops on your hook. Single crochet, you started with 1 loop. Double crochet, you start with 2 loops. So we get that by doing a yarn over before we insert our hook into the next stitch. So just as before, we insert our hook underneath that teardrop shape of the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop so that you've got 3 loops on your hook. And then with taller stitches, we always remove loops in pairs. So you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. It seems pretty self-explanatory right now when we're doing double crochet, but as we get into taller stitches and other variations, this removing loops in pairs will come in really handy. So we start with 2 loops on the hook, insert, pull up a loop, and then we remove in pairs. Yarn over, remove 2, yarn over, remove 2. We'll just do a few more here. Now you'll see that a lot of patterns call for increases, decreases, front loop only, back loop only. I'm going to show you those real quick. But basically the stitch itself is the same. You start with 2 loops, insert your hook, pull one up so you've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, remove 2, yarn over, remove 2. So front loop only means that if you turn your work towards you and you can see that top teardrop shape of the row below, the front loop is the one closest to you, the back loop is the one farthest away from you. So front loop only means we just go under that front loop to do our double crochet, but the stitch itself is exactly the same. You can see it's a little bit looser. It's usually done for a specific purpose, and you can see that if I turn this towards you, you can see those open back loops, those unused loops. So sometimes there'll be a pattern that will use those loops for something else. And that's why sometimes they'll do one. So back loop means we're just going to work into the back loop of that teardrop shape. The stitch is exactly the same. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, remove them in pairs. So an increase just means work 2 stitches in the same place. So you work your double crochet, yarn over for your next stitch, but instead of going to the next stitch, you're going to insert your hook right again in that exact same place. And you can see that we've got 2 stitches. It makes kind of a V shape here, but don't get that confused with a V stitch. We'll talk about that later. So let me do one more and we'll get to the end of the row. And I'll show you a decrease. So decrease means we're going to take 2 stitches from the row below and turn it into 1 stitch in our current row. So you insert into the first stitch and pull up a loop so that you've got 3 loops on your hook. You remove 1 pair, which means you take the stitch all the way to the very end, this very last yarn over, and then you stop. And now we're going to do the second half of our decrease. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop. So you can see that I've still got this loop from the first stitch I started to do, but now I've got a second stitch here. Yarn over and pull through the first 2, and you can see I have 2 partly completed stitches, and I'm sure you know where we're going here. We're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 at once. And that's how we take 2 stitches in the bottom row and turn them into 1 stitch in the current row. So I'm going to just do a regular stitch to give us some space here, and I'll show it to you again. So you do a regular double crochet all the way until the very last step, and then you stop. Leave that on your hook while you start the next one. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and remove the first pair of that so that you've got 3 loops on your hook now. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops at once. You can see how that looks from the front and the back. We also talked about in firm foundations extended double crochet as a foundation instead of a foundation chain. But you can also do extended double crochet as a regular stitch, and it adds just a little extra length and flexibility. So you start the same way, and when you have those 3 loops on your hook, instead of starting with removing your pairs, you yarn over and chain 1. So it just gives us a little extra room, and then you start removing in pairs. So start as usual with 2 loops on your hook for double crochet, insert and pull up a loop. But before we start removing in pairs, we're going to chain 1 just through that leftmost loop. It gives us a little more space. This is a variation that will only happen when a pattern calls for it in particular. But it's nice to know what they mean when they say extended stitch. It just means add that extra chain. And if you look, let me take the hook out for a second here. You can see how much taller the extended single crochet or extended double crochet are than the regular. But they also look a little bit different, and they look a little fuller because of that extra chain in there. So you can see how that might come in handy. And then the last thing I want to show today is post stitches. Post stitches are most commonly in double crochet, although they can be in any stitch. The concept is the same. Most commonly it's used in ribbing, like around hats and gloves, but it also has a purpose in other functions around the edges of bags anytime you want it to be a little bit tighter. Post stitches are also used for cables. So the first is a front post stitch, and the next is a back post stitch. It seems like they would make sense, but I do want to show you, because when you do a regular double crochet, you work through the top loops, but we're not going to do that. We're going to work around the post of this stitch, and when they say post, they mean just the body of the stitch. So we're going to actually insert our hook from front to back around the post of that stitch, and then work our double crochet. Yarn over, pull through, and remove in pairs. And you can see how that adds some texture. It pulls both of those stitches up towards the front. And so you can see how if I had an intricate design of front post stitch cables, watch that again, around the body of the stitch, that it could create quite an intricate design. Front post means insert the hook from front to back. So the opposite must also be true. Back post stitch means you yarn over, but instead of inserting your hook front to back, you insert your hook back to front. But you're still doing the same thing. You're trying to go around that post. Can you see how that looks? Yarn over, pull through, and remove your pairs. And you can see how the front loop stitches are forward, the back loop stitches are backwards. Let's do another one here. So I'm going to just open that up a little bit so you can see that post free and clear. Insert the hook from back to front. See that? Simple as that. It's a little awkward at first, takes a little getting used to, but I know with some practice you can do it. So ribbing, you can see the beginnings of this here. If I were to just alternate a front post and a back post and a front post and a back post, you see where I'm headed here, don't you? Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you out there thinking. Here is that alternate ribbing that we see so often in crochet. You can do any combination of stitches. You can do 2 front, 2 back, 2 front, 2 back. You can do 3 in 1, but they all work the same way. So front post, front to back, back post is back to front, and that's double crochet.